This is Boomer Life on CL 650.
Welcome back to the program. I'm Sterling Fox, joined in studio by Dawn Schooler. Dawn is the Director of Clinical Services with Jericho Counseling, and there are 3 clinical locations around Vancouver at Metrotown, on West Broadway, and down at Cole Harbour as well. And you can always reach them, by the way, anytime, 9 to 5, 7 days a week. Yep. They'll pick up the phone if you dial 604-JERICHO or 604-537-4246. All of that, by the way, is on the website at JerichoCounseling.com. So if you didn't have a chance to jot it down, just go to the website or remember 604-JERICHO. That's pretty easy to remember. Baby boomers, we're sort of 50-somethings and beyond. As we look to our lives and the changes going on in our lives, some of which are a little disturbing. This aging thing ain't the greatest for us all. But, you know, we also look at our psychological well-being. And I'm wondering if a person in their 50s is feeling a little beset upon or a little troubled or a little internally just not right. Are we too far gone to be able to enjoy the benefits of a counselor? Is this the kind of things our children and grandchildren do? We're just a little too far, gone to seed too far, or what? What's the deal with boomers?
Well, you know, we hear a lot. We hear, I wish I had done this sooner.
Oh, okay.
We hear this from our people in their 50s, their 60s, and their 70s.
Right.
You know, so I'm a big believer in fact, it's never too late. And at any point that you want to settle in, dive in, dig in, there's value to be had for the work that you want to do.
I think of that famous line from Cool Hand Luke. What we have here is a failure to communicate. And isn't that the root of about 50% of the human condition's problems?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't have the stats on it by research standards, but I'm going to be with you on at least 50%, because very often, even in the example we talked about earlier, between husbands and wives.
Right. Where he's doing all the right things that he's been schooled to do, and this is how I love you.
Yeah.
I get you. I buy your gas. I get you a new car. We go on trips. The kids are well dressed, and so are you. Yeah. I don't have to say I love you. I do all this stuff instead.
Exactly.
Well, she still wants to hear I love you.
Yeah. And very often, all we got to do is say, this is how great. Now I understand more about how you're loving me. I'm going to take note, and I'll tick. He just loved me. He just loved me.
Right.
And men are very often open to, if you tell her twice a week that you love her, you're just not going to have this problem anymore. Right? And they're like, thank you. So it doesn't all have to be real rocket science.
We're so disturbingly solution-oriented,
well,
aren't we?
Kind of, yeah.
But and that doesn't speak much to our romantic soul, but we are capable of that as well.
Oh, so much. And when I think about baby boys and toddler boys and boys in grades 1 to 6, they're not that different than girls. Their feelings get hurt.
Right.
They cry just as easily. They need our support and help. And I don't think we're all that different as adults either. So men really just need a caring, safe place to get connected to those feelings again, because they used to be, and the world teaches them not to be. So I'd be really clear that and I've had this. I love this job so much because I have had these deep and I mean they're very intimate and vulnerable conversations with extraordinary men who just all they want is to be closer to and more connected to their wives, and they can't figure out what's missing.
Right.
And a few of these conversations are like, oh, okay, I get it. And things change quickly and lastingly. And it's quite dramatic.
So in your job, I mean, you actually do get to see the light bulb come on over someone's head.
It's gorgeous.
On a fairly regular basis.
Yes.
How satisfying must that be?
It's deeply satisfying.
I could well imagine.
Yeah.
So there's no such thing as too old for counseling.
And in fact, I think it's a wonderful role modeling. What's the best way to get somebody else to eat well is if I eat better. If I'm going to eat more fruits and veggies, then my kids might eat more fruits and veggies.
Sure.
If I think that my children might benefit from this, they're not going to if I'm not willing to do it. If they see me on a journey of self-exploration, very often they'll say, hey, my dad or my mom is doing this in their 50s, 60s, or 70s.
Right.
It's got to be okay for me and my marriage as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful role modeling.
It is, and especially because if once the it's on the table, then the stigma goes away. Because well, then, geez, we're family here, and we've known each other for decades, and you're going to counseling?
Yeah.
Holy cow!
Yeah.
So it can't be all that bad because you're a pretty okay person.
Yes.
You're not nuts.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, exactly. And I love that you brought that up, because very often people don't reach out for help because they're not that bad.
Right.
They're living mostly pretty good lives, which is fabulous. And what we want is to help people live lives that are just a little bit easier or just a little bit better. You don't have to have a problem this big and this deep to get a little bit of help. And very often, a few sessions, a little coaching, a little clarity, a really objective place to sound some ideas off of yield dramatic results.
You mentioned a couple of times about group therapy programs, and we've been talking mostly about one-on-one counseling experiences. Talk to us a little bit about what that group thing must be like, because I, for one, would find it somewhat more difficult to open up in front of a group of strangers rather than just one individual.
Yes. Well, and we do two primary groups that we're running on a very regular basis is our anger management, and the other is we call it our premarital counseling, but in fact it's a workshop designed. It's a one-day workshop designed for couples who want to have different kinds of conversations. So we are working on communication skills.
Okay.
We're working at understanding how our values come into play as individuals. And then there's lots of layers to that. We talk about how to manage money in a couple relationship and those sorts of ideas. So very often in group settings, it's a little more teaching oriented than sort of self-exploration. The self-exploration happens usually as the takeaway, because you're right, it is kind of uncomfortable to reveal too much to complete strangers.
Sure.
And so we structure that so that it's much more a teaching environment. You're welcome to share, and you don't have to.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the last group activity I partook in was Lamaze classes when the children were really, really little.
Really little.
I don't function well in groups like that, but I had a great time.
Absolutely.
That was fun.
Yeah.
So, here I am contradicting myself.
Yes.
Because, as I look back on the experience, we had a lot of fun. We laughed a lot.
Absolutely.
And we learned a ton.
Exactly.
And that's mission accomplished as far as you're concerned.
Indeed.
So, and now what you talked earlier about in these half-hour sessions that are free
consultation.
Sure. You talk about a disclosure of fees, for example.
Yes.
Nice upfront conversation about here's what it costs.
Yes.
So when does a person come to understand, Dawn, whether he or she needs a session or a series of sessions, and then do the math on all of that?
Right. By and large, we see we collaborate with our clients on that. There are a handful of problems, if you will, that can really be remedied in 2, 3, 4 sessions.
Okay.
Those would be more specific conversations like, do I change jobs? Do I go back to work? Maybe some conversations about how to navigate a particular relationship with a son or daughter-in-law. Yeah, those would be fairly, short-term kinds of conversations. Longer-term stuff, anxiety, depression, historical kind of struggles in relationships. Those are typically kind of longer, and we generally recommend, a session every couple of weeks for somewhere between 3 to 6 months.
Okay.
And so again, then that allows people to kind of do math on that and go, do I have that kind of time resource? Do I have that kind of money resource? And do I have the appetite right now and the bandwidth to kind of jump in and do that?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and of course, and some of those determinations would be made on the basis of age and just available time.
That's
too, right?
Yes.
And degree of commitment to getting better.
Absolutely. And people, once you sign up or sign on or come and have a conversation, it's completely voluntary every step of the way. You book, you reschedule, you cancel, you take a break, you come back. There's absolutely no obligation once you start something to keep doing it. It's really negotiated all the time, and the client decides what it's going to look like every step of the way.
Jericho Counseling has 3 locations in Vancouver at 805 West Broadway, downtown at Cole Harbor, and at it's 510 Burrard. That's Cole Harbor.
510 Burrard.
Yeah,
Burrard
and
Pender.
then up there at right behind
Metrotown.
Metrotown, just off Kingsway in Burnaby. They're available online at JerichoCounseling.com, or you can give them a call. 604 Jericho is the number, but you can remind yourself of that by checking out the website. Don Schooler, a real pleasure to meet you. Thanks for coming in. I look forward to many more conversations.
As do I.
That's it for this episode of Boomer Life. We'll see you next time here on Sea Isle 650.